Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Tom's Gadget Garage. Today I'm going to be doing a little bit of a battery upgrade video for the Segway Ninebot Max G3. Now apparently the battery that's used in the Segway GT3, not the GT3 Pro, that's a 72 volt system, that's something completely different, but the regular GT3, it's got the same voltage and apparently all the same connectors. The difference is it has a much larger battery, and that battery can be used in the Segway Ninebot Max G3. So that's exactly what I'm going to do today. And then, of course, I'm going to do a bunch of other tests with this once I get this thing installed. But I will just say that, you know, I'm not recommending that anybody do this. This is just me tinkering around to see how well this thing actually works. As you can see, this is the battery pack itself. It's pretty sizable. 46.8 volts, 19.2 amp hours. Good for 899 watt hours of capacity. So significantly more than the 596 watt hours that you get with the Ninebot Max G3 battery. And of course here we've got all of our connectors, and we've got some heat shrink on the XT90 connector here to keep things nice and safe. But anyways, what I'm going to go ahead and do is get this on a scale. We'll see how much this thing weighs. All right, so let's go ahead and get a weight on this thing. Looks like 10.4 pounds, and of course we'll take the weight of the battery in the Ninebot Max G3. For all of you on the metric system, that's 4.72 kilograms. All right, folks, so to get access to the battery, we are going to have to remove this bottom plate here, and there are 11 3mm hex screws that secure all of this into place. Now, keep in mind, Segway does have an official video on how to swap batteries out, so I will include that in the description below. But like I said, you will need a 3mm Allen key, and if you've got some kind of power tools, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, you risk getting some kind of carpal tunnel trying to take 11 of these screws in and out. All right, let's go ahead and see what we've got under here. This deck comes off really nicely here. As you can see, it's got a nice gasket, rubber gasket here to keep things nice and watertight. As you can see, they did a very good job with the wiring on this scooter. Everything is nice and tidy, and they've got a very airy kind of compartment here, which is going to be important for thermal management. Heck, I even see they've got a heat sink here on the speed controller, so that is really nice. Definitely more airy than we saw on the Ninebot Max G2. One thing I am noticing is that they've got this kind of adhesive foam tape here holding everything down. Same thing with the wraps on some of these wires, and unfortunately, this stuff doesn't really peel off. Like once it's stuck, it's stuck. So this is going to get torn when we remove it, which is unfortunate. But anyways, that's what we got to do to get this battery swapped out, because ultimately we need to get these cables out of the way so we can pull this thing out. So that's exactly what we're going to do right now. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this power plug undone here. And then I'm going to go ahead and take off this zip tie, which is holding this bundle of cables together, because the one that we need actually routes over here. So I'll have to take this adhesive off so we can get access to that. And then we've got one more plug here kind of buried under all this, and I'll have to get some of these wires out of the way to undo that. Looks like this one here has some pinch tabs. I'm going to go ahead and pinch those and then kind of wiggle it off. There we go. We'll just remember that we've got the lighter colored wires towards the front of the scooter, the darker color wires, black and red, towards the rear of the scooter. This here is that kind of adhesive wrap that we've got on these cables here, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge to get off nice and cleanly. We'll go ahead and take off the zip tie back here. And there we go. So we finally got all three of those cables unplugged. They do this for water resistance and things like that, so you'll definitely want to make sure you rewrap these wires when we swap the battery. And given that this foam adhesive is just tearing off, I'm going to go ahead and just cut through this nicely. Now right here is a metal plate which is used to secure this battery in place, and there are two 3mm hex screws down at the bottom that hold this into place, so we're going to go ahead and get those removed right now. Once those are removed, this retention plate slides right out. I'm going to go ahead and remove this zip tie here as well. That way we can get these wires pushed out of the way so we can lift this whole battery unit out of here. And this should just pop right up. And it does. So that is our battery. And as you can see, there's now a huge gaping void where that battery once sat. And if you're curious what the stock battery weighs, here you go. 8.4 pounds, 3.83 kilograms. That's exactly 2 pounds less than the GT3 battery. Also on this battery, we can see that it is 46.8 volts, 12.75 amp hours. That's good for 597 watt hours of capacity. So the 899 of the new battery is going to give us significantly more range. But like I said, I will be doing an official range test to test that out. Something that I am noticing is that the foam pattern on here is quite a bit different. So this here's got some foam up front, 2 in the back. This has got them kind of on the sides here around the lip. This one here has got foam, so the GT3 battery has foam on the sides, whereas on the stock G3 battery, there is no foam. If I go ahead and turn this around here, we've got a couple foam pads here, and I turn this around here, and of course we've got those connection points with the cables, but these here actually wrap around as well, so you don't have those same feet on here. What I ended up doing was I took these strips off of the side of this battery and then cut a few strips to put here on the front, in the back, as well as on the back of the battery. That way we can basically more or less have the same cushioning that the stock battery has. Now I'm going to go ahead and get all these wires back into this rubber retaining clip here at the front of the scooter. That way we get things nice and tidy. And to secure these into place, I'm going to go ahead and use some strips of duct tape, because that's all I've got at the moment. Get these nice and organized. And there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and get all of our connections back together. I am going to be adding this piece of heat shrink here, since I've pretty much mangled this like foam covering on these cables. And now that I've got all the zip ties and everything nicely bundled together, I'm going to go ahead and plug in the main power cord. And one thing that I almost forgot was this battery retention plate. Just be sure you get this in, ideally before you redo all the wiring. But either way, I was still able to get it in, just kind of puzzle piece it in there, and it fits right in. Now that we've got all of our wiring, our retention plate, and all of our cables organized, we can get the bottom plate reattached. Now that that's all squared away, let's go ahead and turn this thing on. Now, one thing to remember is that you're going to have to plug the charger into the scooter first to activate the battery, but once you do that, we should be able to power this on. There we go. Let's see how much charge we've got. It says 75%, 19.9 miles of range. Eco, it's showing, let's see, 37.2 miles of range. Drive, showing 30.2 miles of range. So anyways, I'm going to get this battery charged up, but I'm going to go ahead and hop in the app, see what we see. Here, I'll put it up on the screen, but it says we've got 75% charge. Total capacity, 19,200 milliamps, so 19.2 amps. Voltage currently at 51.5. Let's go ahead and go to more info. And yeah, everything's at 0, number of charging cycles 0. So I'll go ahead and get this thing charged up, and I'll take this out on a range test here in a future video. So as you can see, the upgrade process was relatively straightforward, but like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I'm just tinkering with this. I'm not recommending that anybody go out and do this, because I have no clue what the impact will be on the warranty for this scooter. But anyways, I'm excited to see how this thing does. Like I mentioned, I will be putting together the full range test video in the future, and let me know if you have any questions, comments, thoughts, concerns. Happy to address those in the comment section below. And as always, thank you so much for tuning in to Tom's Gadget Garage. We'll see you next time.